All right, so we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this. This is a great big goddamn story.
It is.
So
it's big.
This story comes from The Independent. Also, fucking everywhere.
Sure. You can find it anywhere.
The right thing to do. Biden announces student debt relief for millions of borrowers. Borrowers who took out federal loans to pay for college are eligible up to $10,000 in relief. Pell Grant recipients could see as much as $20,000 in debt cancellation. There's some caveats to that based on income.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, this is a significant amount of debt relief that is being done at the stroke of a pen. There's some worry that the Supreme Court will overturn this based on saying, like, Biden does not have the authority to do it. And so there might be some legal challenges to his authority to actually accomplish this.
Sure. And that's starting to come out now.
Yeah.
Hopefully he has the legal authority to do it. We'll see. They like to really stick their thumb into a lot of pies.
They do.
So, it could be that they might just, very partisanly make this decision that they say, no, he doesn't have the ability to do it. And it could, I will say though, that's the second time that the Supreme Court would shoot themselves in the foot in a huge way before an election.
Right before I thought the same thing. It's like, you guys want to go out on a limb on the right and say, hey, we're the party that means you can't get an abortion and you owe 10 grand more than you thought you did.
Yeah.
Vote for derp.
Yeah. I don't know how because every single attack ad then is, they don't want you to have freedom of your own body.
Right.
And they're making you pay back all these loans that colleges wound up extorting. You know what I mean? Like there's so many ways that you can run this. College has changed over the years in expense. Back before Reagan, when people started to go to school, it was a lot less expensive. And one of the major reasons why it was less expensive was because school was subsidized by the government. Mm-hmm. And that's every school, right? As time went on, the Republicans started whittling away more and more and more at that money. And so that money started coming more and more and more out of our own pockets. So you needed to take out larger and larger and larger loans. And it's not just a matter of inflation. It is a matter of whole dollars of your income, hours that you would have to work to pay something like that back. They've done several of these infographics that show going to school in the 70s, you could pay for it with a couple of summers working. Yeah. Going to school now, it's tens of thousands of dollars.
You can't pay for it.
You cannot pay for it that way.
You can't work your way through school.
It's
anymore.
impossible.
No.
It's too expensive. And it's because they've taken all this money out. This money that used to be part of the higher ed system through grants to pay for, to help all students go to school and to help subsidize the costs of these higher institutions of higher learning. They took all that, a lot of it away. Yeah. And so now we're in this position where school has to get paid for. These people need living incomes. And working in higher ed is not... You're
not getting rich.
You're not getting rich. You're not living high on the hog. In fact, I've worked in higher ed for 20 years. And my income is a third of what my wife makes. I make a third of what my wife makes. She makes an immense amount of money in comparison to what I make. But I was able to put us through school. I was able to, there's other things that come with that. I'm able to do, have nights off and weekends off to work on other projects. So there's a good give and take with that. But the amount of money I make there is insignificant in comparison to a private sector job. So it's not like everybody at a higher ed institution is raking in the dough.
No, not even close.
Like you make the decision to work there. In fact, I still have student loan debt. And my student loan debt might be written off because I have worked for a nonprofit for over 20 years. There is like an actual loophole that if you work for public, like a nonprofit for a long time, and you show that you paid the amount of money that you paid, you could then get, your student loan debt taken away. Well, I had to literally finance the entirety of my school when I went to school on my shoulders. I got grants, I got Pell Grants, I got all these other things. But I had to finance that myself, and I still carry that debt. Like, I still carry that debt today.
Decades after you graduated.
This is 2 decades after I graduated.
Right.
So and I'm a guy who has means, and I've been paying this whole time.
Right.
I've been paying time and time, like for all of the time. When I first graduated, I was paying interest only because that was all I could afford. That's
all you could do. Yeah, and so the balance just never goes down.
For years, I was paying interest only.
Yep.
And then, maybe 10 years ago, I started paying on the principal. But it took that long to get to that point in my life where I had enough money to actually start. But I was literally paying hundreds of dollars a month in interest only.
Never touching the principal.
Never touched the principal.
Never touching it.
I am not a unique case.
No.
I'm a pretty average case. They were saying 20 million people just woke up and they don't have that debt hanging over them anymore.
Man, that's enormous. I read a couple I might get some of these numbers wrong, but they are generally close. So, from a couple of articles I read about this, the cost of a 4-year degree, a college tuition, has gone up 300% in the last 25 years.
100% makes sense.
The cost, the rise in inflation of wages is 177.8%. Now, when the cost of education outstrips the inflation by almost 2 to 1, it means that every year that goes by, the cost of it, the value of an education is lessened. The other thing that we're doing here is we are creating a gulf. We are creating an impossible disparity at a time when it's so essential to have an educated workforce as the world becomes more complicated and more technical and more specialized. But if the cost of education continues to outstrip the pace of inflation and the pace of wage growth in 2 to 1 terms, then people start to look at that and say, an education actually won't pay itself back. An education may or may not be worth doing. It also means that people have less inclination to take a chance on an education and say, I'm going to do this because I love it. I'm going to do it because it's important to me. I'm going to do this because this makes me a better version of myself. That math doesn't make sense anymore.
No.
In the 90s, when I went to school, because I'm a million, in the 90s when I went to school for an English degree without a second fucking thought because I loved English and that's what I wanted to do. And I thought I was going to teach, but I had no worries. It never even occurred to me, genuinely, that my education was inextricably tied to the idea of getting a job. Like, I wanted an education because an education was a de facto valuable thing to have to grow as a person, to be a better version of who you are. That is, I think, still very much true. But we don't get to think in those terms, those sort of like quasi-romantic terms about what an education means for you as an individual when education costs continue to grow at a rate this disproportionate to the rest of all the other costs and the other monies coming in. It's ridiculous. Now we have this like very utilitarian view of education.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, just an inherently bad thing.
It is.
And I know that like maybe we'll get some pushback on that, but I just genuinely think that it is inherently bad.
It's bad for progress.
It is.
It's bad for progress because when you look at all the progressive times in history, you look at the times when people had the leisure time and the will to learn new things and take those chances, like the Enlightenment. You look at the Greeks, you look at like all those moments in history when people were pushing the boundaries of intellectualism. Those were all parts of history where people chased those dreams, where people pursued that art. They, in the times when it was lean and, like you didn't have a lot of that during the fucking, like the dirt bowl or whatever.
The dust bowl. Yeah.
You didn't have that. You didn't have that in the Depression. You didn't have that at that time. You have to have that social surplus where where people can decide to, it's not going to ruin my life if I do this. That's why universal basic income is such a big deal. That's why universal basic income could change our world for the better because it would allow people maybe a possibility of having that idea of leisure thinking, which automatically creates progress for the human race. It
does. It's like you cannot be, I'll tell you a boring story. So I don't believe that you can be a very high quality problem solver when you are under the gun all day. Right? I don't believe that is generally speaking possible. I think that if we strip away education to nothing more than a glorified version of a trade school, and I'm not shitting on trade schools.
No.
I don't want anyone to think I'm thinking that.
I understand.
But I'm saying that like we have had a different view of a college and university education. We've had a different idea of what a liberal arts education meant. It meant that you went to school and you got your degree in computer science, but you also took all these other classes that weren't just computer science.
You rounded your education.
And why do you do that? Because I think we understand that there's a value to your point, to rounding out your education, making you a better thinker, making you a more robust lateral thinker, making you a better problem solver. I've had a couple of different types of jobs in my life. So at the job that I had before the one I had now, you'll remember, like, I worked like fucking crazy.
You worked 17 hours a day. Yeah.
And the level of work that I did, I was constantly solving these like repetitive problems. Like the problems became over time the same question, the same solution, the same question, the same solution. The thing is that they came in so fast and furious that I was constantly under the gun, constantly stressed, never able to take a step back. And there was a moment in my life where I thought, I think this job is making me stupid. I can't think anymore. All I can do is like solve the same series of repetitive problems. Yeah. And then I got a job where I have some time to think. And I realized, man, I actually can come up with a lot of really good solutions if I have an opportunity to
breathe.
Breathe, man. And see and think. And it's made my ability to act in the same profession, in the same field. I am a vastly more efficient worker. I'm a vastly more sharp, but I don't work as hard. Like we trade off. There's a trade-off between volume and creativity. You most of the time, most of us can't do both.
Sure.
And we are shitting on ourselves if we are insisting on volume at the sake of creativity. We're not going to solve the big problems we are faced with. And I think that education, the way that it's being sort of incentivized and financed, it's rewarding a volume-based economy and a volume-based worker.
And it's being pressed by business owners who continue to push and continue to foster a grind economy.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so for them, it makes sense to minimize those parts of the degree, because what they do want is college to be a trade school.
Yeah, man.
What they do want is for you to not have that breath. What they do want is for you to, not think about unionizing.
Yeah.
To not think about.
To not have any perspective or history, man.
To not have any of that stuff. And they want to try to do that. Like, it makes sense to the bottom line. It makes sense to the quarterly profit. It makes very much sense to demonize school, to make it look like that. I want to talk for a second about the hypocrites coming out that are fighting against this, because there's a lot of people that are fighting against it for many different reasons. But specifically, Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder. And I don't know if you remember who Steven Crowder is.
Is he the gun guy?
He's the jackass who has a fucking gun on him the whole time.
And or in his own studio.
And
what if somebody breaks into my podcast studio and I gotta shoot him?
What if somebody comes down to my basement?
Like, whatever, dude.
In any case,
I'm unsafe everywhere I go.
Well, it's like, Jesus.
All right,
that guy's such a frail dude. But in any case, that guy and Ben Shapiro both posted sort of paying this off. But then people went and found their PPP loans that were forgiven. So $70,000 for Crowder and I think $50,000 for Shapiro. They both applied for
liars.
They got it, and then they got it forgiven by the government, because the government.
Of course they did.
And this is the thing, is like, there's a couple of answers to this. One, if you're just a schmo, right, like a regular schmo, and you're upset about this, and you have debt, then just refuse it. Right? Like if you have this debt, you're genuinely opposed to it, then write a letter to the government and say, I oppose this. I am going to pay this back. You have that option, right? You have that option.
Don't take the forgiveness.
Don't take it, right? But the problem is that you will. You will, because everybody will. Yep. There's not, you're a liar. It's not like you're morally opposed to this. Yep. You're going to do it. You're just going to do it. And that's the thing. And the other people who are hypocrites, there's so many different, and Biden even said this after he signed this, and someone asked him the question, and he said, well, is it fair that, corporations get billions in tax cuts and you don't get to see that?
Yep.
Like, you don't get to see that either. There's plenty of money all around. Here's the thing that I want to tell everybody. This is your money.
I know.
This is your money, right? This isn't the government this isn't fiat. This isn't somebody who's saying this was someone else's money and these are federal loans. Where does the federal government get its money? It gets it from you. It gets it from me. It gets it from all of us. This is our money. We can make these decisions with our money.
Yep.
And we decided to do it this way. Sometimes we make the decision to buy a stupid fucking plane that nobody uses. Sometimes we make the decision to send large amounts of troops over to a place that we then pull them back from. So we make these decisions with our money, and we're making this one now.
Yep. And it's like there are two points to that I want to emphasize. One is like those fuckers who are always opposed to entitlements always take the entitlement.
Fucking A, they do.
Because of course you do.
With me, it's different.
It's not a matter, because like if you're willing to take the entitlement, it's not a principle.
Yeah.
You do not stand on principle.
Yeah.
So now we have to say, all right, if principle isn't the thing, now let's talk about practicality.
Yeah.
And if as soon as we move things away from principle and into pragmatism, then we have to say, you know what? Every dollar we invest in education returns more than $1 back.
Fucking A.
So fuck you running.
Yeah.
You're always lying. You're always lying. Just always.
Yeah.
Always. You're lying. Right? Yeah. Lying.
Yeah.
It's lies. It's fucking bullshit. The other thing is like, there is a better uses argument. And I started off with like, I acknowledge, I think there are better uses for this same volume of money, but we don't have access to those uses. Again, pragmatism.
Yeah.
This was done with the signature of one person making a decision. It's the president. We can't get those other things done. Do I think it would be better overall? I think it would be better if everybody got to go to college for free.
Yeah.
That's what I fucking think. I think actually every dollar invested in education returns more than $1. It's good money spent. I think we live in a highly specialized, educationally required world, and it would just make sense to educate as many human beings in our planet as fucking possible. So if you're asking me, is there better uses? Yeah, I think we should use that money and a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think anybody should pay for college.
Sure.
That's fucking ridiculous, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Pragmatism requires that we look at the world we fucking live in and what is actually possible. So I can't. That better uses bullshit, fuck your better uses. Do you think it would have gotten done? Do you live in a world where we have like more than like the barest, slimmest fucking margin of Democrat? Yeah. We have 50. We need the fucking vice president to swing in and like swoop in like Tarzan.
Would never
and vote.
go through.
Would never go through.
It has to be done this way. And this is the other thing too. Whenever you're cleaning up a mess, it's never pretty. It's never great use of money, right? It's not a great use of money when you have to spend money to clean something up. You know, when your fucking sump pump goes out and your fucking basement's flooded, you got to spend the money.
Yep.
It sucks, but you got to spend the money to fix that problem. This is a problem fixer.
It is.
This is fixing problems for millions of people across the nation. Millions of people woke up today with $10,000 or $20,000 less in debt. And that changes their whole perspective on how they spend, on what they spend, on how they put away for their future, on how they pay for their own children's colleges and educations. It changes so much. It's not glamorous money. It's not glamorous money. It's not a big, facility where people can go to school for free. It's cleaning up a shitty mess that was made by Republicans 30 years ago when Reagan got in, 40 years ago when Reagan got in office. That's what it is.